Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Diarmuid O'Kyla. We're here outside Middleton Courthouse. Richard here as a tenant, was up in court today, and with an attempt to have him evicted from his long-term tenancy. It's been a dispute going on now since February 2016. Anyway, we have Richard Glavin here. Richard, how are you doing?
Not too bad.
And Richard's neighbour, we have Jimmy Brosnan. Excuse me, Jimmy. Richie, how did you get on today? What happened inside?
The judge made an order that I return back here on the 6th so that I can inspect the properties that I've been offered by the council.
Great.
Due to the 4 eviction notices I've been fighting over the last over 2 years, and so far everything is looking good.
Great.
But it's been a long battle.
Certainly has. Jimmy, what do you think yourself?
I think it's
You've been following this for a long time.
I think it's brilliant, and it just goes to show what people can do if they stand up for their rights. And it's very important that people stand up for their rights. We are citizens and we have rights.
Yeah.
Richie stood up for his rights, and he's won in the end of the day.
Yeah, and I would urge any tenants that are in this dispute with their landlords to get up off their asses and fight. Yeah. Because there's laws there to fight the law, and I'm the proof of it here today anyway. Yeah. I'm the proof.
Well, that's the message. It's a very positive result here. Just to give a summary, this dispute's going on since February 2016, when a rogue landlord, he has to be described as, took over an AMA-owned property in Harbour Hill in Cobh and proceeded to evict many of the tenants there and bring in, pack in more numbers into small rooms just to track up the rent supplements he was receiving. The conditions in the apartment are atrocious. It was even featured on the RTE Primetime special show in December of 2016, showing how bad, utterly inhuman the living conditions were. So the scandal with this whole dispute has been that all of the government agencies that have responsibility for social care and for looking after tenancies, and I include the council, I have to say, I include the Residential Tenancies Board, whom, between a number of the tenants, have had to deal with 8 or 9 different hearings in total about falsely produced or invalidly produced eviction notices by this rogue landlord. It's been a scandalous thing. Tenants have had to put up with electricity being disconnected, with locks on doors being changed, with forcible entries in through windows, in through doors and so on. Absolute disgraceful at bullying and threatening conditions. In fact, this landlord went so bad, didn't he, Richie, at one point, that a Gardaí had actually to be called to the scene to protect other Gardaí who felt in fear of their own safety. So of course, the outstanding thing today is that the rogue landlord is still out there and still having received huge monies from the public funds, is still not called to a task. One of the very scary aspects of this is that the landlord in this case, whose name is on a bank account, that received the rental payments from the Department of Social Protection and from the HAP system, the name on the bank account we have documented has changed at least 4 times. So we wonder what scheme is going on. We know anecdotally from looking at envelopes coming in, there could be 20 different people with bank accounts living at the same address. So there is definitely some kind of a scam going on, and it has unfortunately resulted in the death of your neighbour, whom I think would be alive today if conditions in those apartments were looked after. Poor old Leo Owens, may he rest in peace, had a terrible fall last December, and unfortunately he lost his life in it. A fall which shouldn't have happened. He wouldn't have been on a stairway at night time, only for conditions in his own apartment were so bad. And in fact there's whole questions about the conditions of the stay, maintenance of the stairway and so on, which were neglected. So these things are costing lives and destroying lives. So Cork County Council have finally come up trumps. They have offered Richard accommodation, which I think he's probably going to accept, and which will end hopefully this dispute, the current phase of it. But it's tragic that it's taken so long. But the message that you gave at the start, lads, is that tenants and people have to fight for their rights. Landlords shouldn't be allowed to rule the roost, and neither should the RTB. But in this case, where the landlord was seeking an order for possession of the apartment. The scandal here is that the Residential Tenancies Board financed taking a case against Richard and also financed a legal representation for the landlord in a case against the tenant, yet did nothing to help the tenant get any legal representation. Like, this is a state agency that's supposed to be independent and anything but independent. I suppose, especially in Leo's case, Leo had serious disabilities and others involved have as well. And the scandal is, I remember at the time we wrote to the Minister with responsibility for disabilities, and they've ignored this goings on. We invited him to Cobh and he didn't see fit to turn up. Despite laws now, United Nations Treaty on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, being approved by government, there's a scandal going on of untold proportions. So I suppose the 6th of December we have to look forward to it, Richie, and
once I
see will you see this place, and I presume it'll be up to scratch. There are standards there which the council are supposed to adhere to, and we can expect that they will be in place for you. So hopefully it's the end of a phase. And we move on. What do you think?
A long phase, but I'd like to thank the surrounding neighbours who backed me on this protest from the very start, and surrounding areas, people that came from surrounding areas around Cork. I'd like to thank every one of them for their support, and because otherwise I wouldn't be in this position today without their support. And thanks to yourself, Mr. O'Brien.
No bother. That's my job. I'm a council rep. Jimmy, what do you think? Have you any kind of final statement on this?
People have to stand up for their rights. We have rights in this country, and all things in this particular situation, they should stand up. I'm glad the RTB was taken over yesterday. There was a demonstration yesterday in Dublin, and it's good to see that. And hopefully more people will stand up and more people will march for the housing crisis here in this country and for the poor homeless people. We must stand up for them. Who knows, tomorrow you could be homeless.
Any of us could be affected. I mean, you mentioned these protests in Dublin. It's great. People all over the country should be active. And of course yourselves, lads, you've been active and in organising protests in the Cork region and bringing it to Dublin as well. 24-hour protests. I know the next one is in Cork, outside Cork City Hall on the 11th of December. A 24-hour protest, again, to highlight the fact that the councils, all of them, are neglecting their core responsibility, which is the provision of housing, because all they're doing is echoing government policy. I know here in Cork, between the two councils, they have a combined budget in excess of €500 million. €500 million. And they still are not addressing the issues of housing for the people. They're still wasting tons. I mean, you have the scandal of emergency accommodation. I know one lady and a few of her kids, and the council are paying out €1,960 per week. That's €1,960 per week for B&B, and the lady can't even cook in the facility or wash clothes. It's absolute scandalous waste of public money. So the sooner people take a resolve to solve this problem, the better. We're all with Marshall, lads. We leave it?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.